Good Thursday to everyone in Com 710. Welcome to week boom 6. How's everybody doing? Okay, you progressing well this week. Let's get things started in the right way. That is the last of this afternoon's coffee. Much better though. I am now your sufficiently caffeinated communication instructor here with this week's video. You may have noticed just before we get started that I've just recently posted the questions for this week's reading. I'm doing that on purpose. What I want you to do is to make sure that you read the text rather than read to the question. Okay. So, it may happen that they go up a little later, but that's to get you to focus on the text and not just looking for the question in the text, especially if you have it, the text that is in digital form. Temptation. Okay. All right. Let's take a look at what we're going to be doing this week, and then we'll take a look back at what we did last week. You're going to read part 6, all right, of McPhail and Thomas. And this is this is an introduction. It's a very cursory chapter. This is not deep dive stuff. To web-based, I said chapter 6, I'm in chapter 5, I'm sorry, week 6, chapter 5, web-based and digital media. However, the importance of this particular chapter is one of international media literacy, and that is to make you literate about how it's structured, what are the component parts, what are the right terms by which it's described. It can't be that PhD educated folks such as yourselves in communication don't know, for instance, what HTML means or URL means, or the difference between the internet and the World Wide Web, or what a search engine is, or what indexing is. This just you got to know this. Okay, this is, it's rudimentary, fundamental. So that chapter in the text is going to take a look at that. Right. Also, I am just about finished with your grading of your class presentations. Normally, it's like a week turnaround, just a little bit longer. This time, I had some other items to grade that is from other classes. And a couple of you were late. I think there's still one person that if you haven't turned in that assignment, you got to. I will give you the next presentation that is probably Friday or Saturday, and you can start working on that. Okay. All right. Let's take a look back at last week at your questions. Of course. You should be well on your way, like almost finished, to draft one of your papers, which is due on the 24th of this month. Some of you have touched base with me by way of email saying, I'm not quite sure about this. I'm not quite sure. If you have any questions, please reach out to me now. Because what is it now, the 20th? So the 24th is just 4 days away. In fact, it's Monday. All right, and I really try hard not to be in my office and working on Sunday. My schedule is crazy. In addition to teaching here at Regent, there are other things that I do. My wife has a real hectic schedule, and to keep the momentum going that's kept us married for 33 years. For those who are married, you just got to spend time together. So if you have any issues, if you're hung up on anything, get in touch with me soon with the next couple of days. Because remember, central to the assignment is this is not a draft. All right. That is you need to complete this assignment, these first 3 chapters, as if it were the completion of the 3 chapters. So I'm going to give you, feedback that's meant to help you with the final paper, but I can't do that for you if what you turn in is draft work. Okay. So and that means you've researched it, you've written it well, you've read through it, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, let's take a look at the discussion questions from last week, that is week 5. Excuse me. See how you answered, see what we might add to it. Question number 1, as noted in McPhill and Phipps, the United States gave up control of ICANN, ICAN, the International Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers, in 2016. What is ICANN? What is its function? In your considered opinion, remember from last week's video, when I use that phrase considered opinion, this means I'm assuming that you've done some research and some weighing out of the evidence. And so I don't just mean by, I think it's okay. Your considered opinion was giving control of ICANN. It should be giving up, editorial error. My mistake. Giving up control of ICANN, a good or bad thing. Okay. Let's see. Who do we have? Let's Benjamin, you went last, but we'll take you first. ICANN oversees the domain name system, which helps ensure global consistency in internet addressing. This oversight is intended to maintain a stable and unified internet, especially given the internet's central role in the global economy. While the transition to a global multi-stakeholder governance model aimed to promote international cooperation, in my opinion, a more preferable approach would have been for the U.S. to retain oversight while allowing international stakeholders advisory input without voting rights. This would have preserved global collaboration while ensuring the prevailing interests of the United States, where both the internet and the DNS system were originally developed, to remain uncompromised. A recent example can be seen in the issuing of the U.S. expressing concerns about VeriSign's increasing pricing over the .com domains with the blessing, I assume you mean, of ICANN. If ICANN can remain solely U.S.-centric authority, perhaps this issue would be more easily nipped in the bud, ? Yeah, I don't know. But that's exactly right. Okay, so ICANN, when you maybe, in courses in the future, I should have people register and at least make, sort of the rudimentary setup for a website. I mean, it was part of my business model for a while when I worked heavily in global humanitarian media. As one of the things I would do for our clients is create a web page, and parts of the web page specific to the campaign that we were designing. And there's utility in understanding how this works through learning that through doing, but that would be sort of a different course. But anyway, so when you set up a website, you have to register the name. And the reason for that is, and I'm going to ask you a little bit about it in this week's questions. The reason for that is indexing. Indexing is how things are found out on the World Wide Web. And if you have duplicates of the things, that is websites, then that's a problem. Because when you have a URL, and I'm not going to define that for you now because I've asked you to explain what that is for this week. When you have a URL, it has to be unique. Okay. So when you registered through ICANN kept track that it made sure that it was unique, but it also, kept prices within reasonable limits, because it's sort of like cryptocurrency. URLs are sold as properties, as things, although they don't exist anywhere physically. And ICANN kept a reasonable, sort of price break on how much something could be bought or sold. Now you might be thinking, well, why do I care? I'm probably not going to be buying URLs, et cetera, et cetera. Well, one of the common tactics, let's say tricks, but that's not the right word. Common tactics still goes on in the online space is that there are organizations, companies, people watching events rise and fall in public interest, and then they quickly buy websites that contain keywords that they believe people are likely to be typing in to look for that phenomenon, and then sell them to the entity that's involved. So they could actually buy your name. Let's say, let's just use Benjamin Watson. Let's say old Benjamin just blew up and he was a global phenomenon. Someone tracking, and there's actually a whole bunch of indices online. You can track what people are looking at. Someone tracking sees that people are going and they're searching Benjamin Watson. So they quick register the URL www.benjaminwatson.com. Now, Benjamin, he wants to, and they also purchase and register Ben Watson, Ben Watt, Ben JWA, all sorts of variations. Now, Benjamin, he wants to set up a website in which he can start communicating with the traffic. Maybe even he wants to make some money. Okay. Well, now when he goes to purchase and register that website through ICANN, he finds out that somebody else already owns BenjaminWatson.com. And he goes, what? How's this possible? That's me. Well, no, it's not. It's just your name. So if Benjamin Watson wishes to operate his website from BenjaminWatson.com, he has to pay whomever already purchased BenjaminWatson.com. And it used to be that ICANN would set price limits to what you could charge. Those are going away. So the owner of BenjaminWatson.com could say, well, if you want this URL, $10,000. And I'm not making that number up. I mean, that's not, you can go to ICANN and just look at some of the URLs that are for sale there and see that you're like, whoa, this is some serious pricing. So Benjamin, good answer. I tend to agree with you. I think by way of keeping the free flow of the digital global marketplace moving, that it should stay where it is. Maybe it'll come back one day. I don't know. All right. Question number 2. Note the following from McPhill and Phipps. The ITU has been frustrated in its attempts to coordinate international use of the internet. Okay. Now, of course, inherent in this question is, what is ITU? Okay. And you're like, oh, hey, you're not defining your terms. No, actually, that's because I want you to define the term. So it should be, International Telecommunications Union. Okay. ITU has been frustrated in its attempt to coordinate international use of the internet, largely because the ITU has historically relied primarily on intergovernmental cooperation. Unlike other spheres of international activity in which the ITU has been involved, it remains unclear just who exactly holds the reins of power where the internet is concerned. Your authors make clear that international control of the internet, it's really internets, by the way. There's not one single internet. There's not one gigantic, I'm trying not to give you the definition because I'm asking you to define internet for this week, but there's not one gigantic network that's just all connected together. There are little networks. Some of them connect with each other. Some of them are separate. They don't. They're isolated. Okay, so really it's proper terminology is internets. But anyway, control of the internet is a moving target. Okay. In your considered opinion, you know what that means when I ask, is the lack of international internet control a bane or a boon? Justify your answer. Charles, current lack of international internet control is a boon, like ICANN organization, and that means this is a good thing, which is subject to influence from internal and external actors. International Technology Union is also subject to the agenda of external actors, most concerns of which would be People's Republic of China, which is expanding its influence globally through diplomatic and former military economic means, including Secretary Generalship of the ITU. Although the current Secretary General is an American, Chinese influence on global communication systems, including the internet, will be harmful if they pursue a Chinese focused agenda ahead of a global agenda. Okay, good answer. April, let's see what you have to say. To a lack of singular international authority controlling the internet is both a challenge and a benefit. ITU has struggled to manage global internet governance because power is spread across governments, businesses, and users rather than being centralized. On the plus side, this decentralization model allows for more innovation, free speech, and prevents any one government from having too much control. On the downside, the lack of oversight makes tackling cybercrime, misinformation, and data piracy issues much harder. Yes, exactly true. We tend to think of Westerners tend to think in this sort of very linear, allergies, this very linear sense, and that time and events simply go forward, and they tend to think in terms of progress. That is, the further you get chronologically, the more progressed you are. No, not necessarily true. Historically, and we'll talk about the West here for a second, because that's where this digital technology originates and then emanated out from. Westerners have always traveled and traded extensively. It was sort of baked into who they were, and how it is they got there, starting with the early precursors of the Romans, the Etruscans, who through most accounts were Phoenicians. That is, they came from the eastern point, which eastern end of the Mediterranean. They sailed about this sea, this Mediterranean Sea, and then the Greeks, and in turn the Romans, that spread out not only across the seas but the continents to the northernmost edges. That is where they could really go no further, and when it was practical to eastward, as far as the subcontinent, and even southward. That there were attempts by the Romans to find the source of the Nile and to explore down the coast of the continent of Africa. And this becomes the legacy for Western Europe, and they traded widely and they moved widely, and periodically throughout that history, the openness of trade and the ability to move around and move freely has waxed and waned. But in periods in which it's been open and free, it's been a two-sided coin. On the one hand, the free movement of goods allowed expanding economies, greater security, because if you have a monoistic economy that is based on one thing, or mostly on one thing, if something disrupts that one thing, that's a problem for you as a people. I'll give you an example, and then I'll go back to the benefits of multiple interconnections of an economy. After the Civil War, the United States, prior to the Civil War, I should say, the United States was expanding westward on the continent. First incursions, major incursions by Lewis and Clark in 1802. And then between 1802 and 1860-61, when the war got started, there was a lot of westward expansion. Europeans and Americans, because there were people from there were people from the continent of Africa, from the Caribbean, from all sorts of parts of Europe. They start bumping into established territories by indigenous people, and there are conflicts. Okay. And those conflicts, especially in the 1830s and 1840s, were violent. The conflicts sort of were put on a pause during the Civil War because the country was busy fighting itself. But afterwards, and especially, not only now was it not the United States not fighting itself, but there are a number of people, especially from the South, many of them African American, who were displaced by the war or up and left. I mean, if you lived in a southern state and you had been enslaved, and now you were freed because of the outcome of the war, many stayed where they were, many did not. They're like, yeah, that's enough of that. We are out of here. Some of them migrated north. Quite many of them migrated west, along with many other people and Southerners in particular that were displaced by the war. So the conflicts began again between Indians. And by the way, I'll just tell you by way of linguistic usage, um, I respect any persons if they make a direct request of me to address them in one way or the other. That's fine. The debate over Native American and Indian, in the designation Indian did not come because Columbus thought the people that he met were from the subcontinent of India. That's a myth. In fact, it never made it to the continent of what is, the North American continent that is Columbus. The word India is a bastardization of the Spanish term Indios, meaning the people of God. So, unless somebody asks me directly, say, hey, don't call me that, that's fine. So that's why I use the term. But anyway, so the United States again turned its attention to these clashes with Indians in the West, largely through the design of individuals like William Tecumseh Sherman. They devised a solution. Now, before I tell you what that is, it's important to know that in this history, the United States as a government, and specifically under Ulysses S. Grant, who would become president after the war, tried very hard to resolve the issue. And they initially they turned the sort of the matters over to the Quakers and said, well, it's just a matter of peace and treating these folks in a godly way. And there was still corruption, and it wasn't working, and it wasn't working, and it wasn't working because cultures have momentum. And unfortunately, and it really is unfortunate. I mean, I grew up in the West where sort of the remnants of the conflict shaped the nature of interactions, in my lifetime. It was unfortunate that the two cultures were simply incompatible with each other. An agrarian culture is not compatible with a hunter-gatherer culture. They don't go together. Now, there were some Native American tribes that were already agrarian and they were folded in, but those that were not, especially the Plains Indians, I mean, if you depend on chasing game and the game needs to migrate around because it follows the cycles and the seasons to follow where the grass is, and you put up barbed wire fences everywhere and then plow up the ground and away goes the grasses, and you put corn in its place, and the wild game goes, oh, hey, look at all this food. And the farmer goes, pew, pew. That's a problem. So William Tecumseh Sherman recognized, one of the ways to solve this problem was that many of the Western tribes had a monoistic economic structure. And that is, it was heavily structured around the hunting and killing of big game, significantly buffalo. And he said, well, all you got to do is get rid of the big game, and you'll pull the legs out from underneath this culture. Rather brutal, but it worked. He said, we'll have them starving in 6 months, and they'll be standing outside the forts begging for us to put them somewhere. Okay, brutal. And I'm not selling this as a home game. I'm giving you the history lesson. All right, back to the West. This was not a problem significantly that the West ever had. It had these multiple layers, multiple connections of trade and economy. That was the upside. But the downside is that when you have this free flow of information and items, you also have undesirable things flowing in and out. I mean, you may have noticed that there just a couple of years ago, we found out that because of this global network of movement of people and things, viruses might want to hitch a ride and move around rather rapidly, and that can cause some problems. And that has been the case in Europe in the 14th century. A disease that was unknown to Europe arrived from Asia, the bubonic plague, and wreaked absolute havoc on the population and on the economies and on a whole bunch of things. So, it's a mixed bag. And to think that you're going to have the one without the other is, well, frankly, naive. That is, that you're going to have the free flow of information without people setting up things like the Silk Road. And if you don't know what that is, then go find out. Okay, or international terrorists using the internet and the World Wide Web to do their bidding. So, what are you going to do? All right, good answer. Question number 3. Your authors note that there are no enforceable international copyright agreements. What are some of the benefits and drawbacks to this lack of agreements? Let's see, Billy. The benefit of these agreements are protection by the WIPO and the WTO, that is World Intellectual Property, World Trade Organization. The benefits of lack of enforcement of international copyright agreements is that in business deals, no one is held to any kind of obligation for a business deal. Yeah, and that's a problem. One of the fundamental cornerstones of productive communication, and think about. I want you to start thinking about it this way. Everything is at its foundation a communication. Business is a communication. Media, the exchange of tangible and non-tangible goods, the operation of politics, the function of family, the ebb and flow of romantic relationships, all of that, the clothes you wear, all of that is a communication. And if you don't have a sort of a threshold level of trust in authenticity, then you have significant breakdown. And what do I mean by authenticity? That I assume that what you're telling me, whether it's in business, in government, in the stuff that you sell me, in the relationship that I have with you as a friend or a spouse, I don't have a threshold level of confidence that what you're telling me is actually what is, that is, that you're not deceiving me. Then the entire enterprise, whatever that might be, commerce, politics, relationships, breaks down. Or it never starts in a proper, productive, ordering manner. So when you don't have this stuff, this is a problem. Okay, April, let's see what you have to say. Or did we take you last time? Yeah, TT, let's take you. Absence of international copyright agreements can have both benefits and drawbacks. For the benefits, different countries can develop copyright laws that better suit their unique culture, economic, social context. Okay, that's fair enough. Per drawbacks, without international copyright laws, creators face uncertainty because their work may not be equally protected in all countries. Yeah, and actually put your finger right on it, TT. That is a major one, because now we live in a global economy. And if you don't have this threshold level of confidence that I'm going to put in the time and the money and the effort to create this thing, whether it's an idea or a tangible thing, and then when I introduce it to the global marketplace, someone else just says, oh, nice idea, yoink, and then takes it and begins producing it more cheaply than I can, or you can, or whoever the creator, and put you out of business. Okay, and that's become a significant problem. Do I have an answer? No, I don't necessarily. Question number 4, what's the difference between GEO and LEO satellites? Again, here, this is just making sure that your literacy is where it needs to be. What type of satellites make up Starlink? And again, I didn't define the term because I want you to tell me what it is, okay? Since we were just with you last, and you went first on this question, let's take you again. TT, GEO satellites is geosynchronous because it has a geographical alignment within the Earth's rotational path, that is orbit. Okay, LEO satellites have low Earth orbit at an elevation of about 100 to 1,240 miles above the Earth, compared to GEO. LEO satellites have smaller span of reach to transmit to the Earth. It therefore needs to maintain continuous network coverage. Okay, SpaceX proposal with Starlink. Starlink is made up of LEO satellites. All right, good. Although these satellites lack elevation and wide reach, as wide as GEO, Starlink compensates this by having thousands of additional satellites concentrated, which enable wide and continuous coverage. So if you don't understand this in terms of how the technology goes, think about it like, let me give you the following demonstration. Okay. So here's the, make sure there's nothing going to run out on me. Here's the Earth. See it? Okay. So here's a given surface area of the Earth. Here's this this, imagine this chiclet is a satellite. Okay, the further up you are, all right, the more coverage you're going to have. You could have coverage from this side clear to this side because you're, up here. You like draw a triangle. Choop, choop. Okay, the closer you are, like this low orbit satellite, the less coverage you're going to have, but the better connection you're going to have. Starlink has multiple satellites positioned like this that gives it good connection and then overlapping coverage. And Starlink is being used all around the world to provide internet in places where there's no tower for internet. In fact, I think if I get this wrong, correct me in an email. Okay. I believe it's T-Mobile is now offering an option in its cell phone plan that you can link through your phone to Starlink and have internet access anywheres on the planet, which is pretty good. I mean, not very long ago, and I'm talking about a few years, if you wanted internet access, you had to carry, another device that connected to the global satellite network. It's called a dongle, weird name, connected to this global satellite network, and then, sent out a little teeny signal that your phone picked up, and you could do it that way. But the connection was sometimes kind of it tended to be slow and had some drawbacks. Okay, Starlink is fixing that. Now, one of the interesting outcomes of this, as the space around the Earth becomes more crowded, is the incentive to not use weapons that give out strong electromagnetic pulses like thermonuclear weapons for major powers that depend on these communication networks. That goes up because, now it may be coming, I don't know. All right. But as it stands now, there's no way to set up an electrical magnetic pulse that will just affect one electronic device and not another, unless the other electronic device is shielded from that electromagnetic pulse. Okay. So on the one hand, this encourages major powers not to do that. On the other hand, it tempts lesser powers that as part of their geopolitical game plan, use intentional disruption to contemplate ways to do that. And what do I mean by that? Okay, so the terrorist organization Hamas is one such organization that uses disruption as part of their geopolitical plan. So the October 7th attack on Israel, there was no way, they understood this, those who carried out the attack. This was not designed, and it couldn't have been designed to conquer Israel militarily by punching holes in fences and rushing into the southern part of Israel and killing innocent people and kidnapping them from music festivals and running through neighborhoods and slaughtering those who were just hiding in the corner. This was not going to topple Israel. That wasn't the purpose of the incursion. The purpose of the incursion was to start a disruption that Hamas hoped would lead to Israel's invasion of the Gaza Strip. And then they thought bring the world to their cause by way of support and reaction. So there are organizations who intentionally design murderous and disruptive actions as part of their geopolitical plan. And having the Earth surrounded by satellites is a tempting target for some of those organizations. So what are you going to do? Okay, folks, that is it for this week. Remember, please, to get your papers finished up. I'll tell you what, just to let you focus, I won't give you your second class presentation until after the paper is due, and then I'll add a little time on to when you can turn that second presentation in. Okay, so you still have the time that you need. All right, so finish up with your papers. The reading this week is easy breezy, and likewise the questions. All right. Thank you so much for all your hard work. If you have any questions or you need anything, you can always reach me by phone during my office hours. Otherwise, shoot me an email. All right. Remember that I think about you. I'm praying for you. And as always, I will see you on Canvas. Bye-bye.